Hey, welcome along to Top Shelf Tech. I am Jeremy Nees, and today we're going to be talking about microsegmentation, specifically getting started with microsegmentation using the Zscaler client connector. Now, I would joke that this is one of Zscaler's best kept secrets, and I'd only be partially joking. It's something I was totally unaware of, and maybe I was living under a rock. But Tony Ferguson, down in New Zealand, came to visit me. We had a conversation. He said, by the way, do you know that you can do this with the Zscaler client connector? I said, no, I did not. And he said, I'll send you through a link. And he sent through a link to the Architect's Guide to Universal Zero Trust Network Access. Now, the objective of this guide, very simply, is to illustrate how ZIA and ZPA using the client connector can be leveraged to do LAN-level segmentation for zero trust access for users. Now, there's a number of microsegmentation technologies out there. This is probably this isn't a comprehensive approach to microsegmentation. I'll just start by stating that it focuses around the use of IPv4. It's L3, not so there could still be layer 2 potential risks, security risks. It's a good place to get started with technologies that a lot of people already have in place and are already paying for. So this is just a very quick overview of that, and I'd really recommend if you want to learn more, go download this guide. There's a link there. It's pretty useful to have a quick read of. So firstly, just Zscaler client connector. Now, we're not just talking about this being useful for your Windows corporate devices or your Mac devices. You can actually use this on all sorts of different operating systems, including stuff like Android operating systems used on lots of devices like scanners and warehouses and the like. So this actually has some reasonably broad applicability if you're already licensed for these for ZIA and ZPA. And it focuses really around just adding into your definitions around the traffic that you're going to be forwarding to Zscaler or your AppSec segments in ZPA, adding in the RFC 1918 address space and creating rule sets for those, because usually these are not things that you'd always be looking to send to Zscaler. So look, just jumping right into the detail then, part of the document goes through a number of different options around segmentation and talks about the pros and cons of them, which is very useful. And then it comes around to the solution here. Now, this, of course, is a little bit zoomed out, but if you go download the doc, you'll get a view for it. And really quickly, we jump into this piece here, which looks at how you define policies and the various traffic flows which will be denied or allowed or go by ZIA or ZPA with these flows. Very simply, we are defining policies that include the RFC 1918 space, with some exceptions around DNS, potentially DHCP, to ensure that those still function, and then building out these configurations in ZIA and ZPA. Now, look, today I'm not going to go any deeper than that, apart from to say, if you're currently have these technologies, if you currently have the client connector rolled out, this can be a really good thing to look at to say, how do we actually move towards a sort of more micro-segmented, LAN-segmented approach? Of course, if you've got the Zscaler client connector, that can work when users are at home, when they're in the airport, connected to guest Wi-Fi and the like. So it can be pretty handy to get coverage outside your network, and probably a really good complementary technology and configuration to use with microsegmentation that might be done in the clientless fashion. So we talked about the Zero Trust branch a couple of weeks ago. That's really useful for protecting your sites that you control. It's really useful for things like IoT, OT, where you cannot put a Zscaler client connector or similar on the end device, but this is really useful for the devices that can run the client connector as a way to get started on microseg. So I'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully that's something useful. We've got the Zscaler Zenith Live coming up in a couple of weeks as well. So I'll be up there in Las Vegas and hope to meet some of you folk there. Cheers.